imagine if there was like Eastwards, the movie, and then like they had Richard Lewis in there, and it was me writing all the contracts.
I know.
It was me robbing all the people,
amazing. I love
and
it.
I was running like an acid mine.
Welcome back to Foreplay. We are in the third part of our Heist film arc, which I believe is going to be episode 23 in total. We've already done Heat and the Thomas Crown Affair, so today we'll be doing Dog Day Afternoon, and we will finish our Heist arc with Sneakers next week. So, gentlemen, Dog Day Afternoon, very different kind of heist movie. This one is significantly more intimate, based a lot around the acting, particularly by Al Pacino in this film, who we saw in Heat a couple of episodes ago, and is iconic for his performance and for the kind of psychological nature of this movie, directed by Sidney Lumet, who is a extremely famous Hollywood director. Probably know him for a million of his movies, 12 Angry Men. Many of you have probably seen. If you haven't, I imagine that is going to come up on this show at some point in time. Another one that I think is almost certainly going to come up on this show is Network. I think it'd be very hard for us to avoid that one forever. Do you guys think we'll see any other Sidney Lumet movies?
I mean, listen, the guy is one of those like slept on directors. For
mega.
Like, you know, whenever you talk about the greats, his name never gets brought up. What you have to understand is in 1957, he comes out the gates with 12 Angry Men. It's his first feature film.
Crazy.
And then, you know, which is like, this iconic, I think it's preserved in like the U.S., Congress?
Library of Congress.
Library of Congress
right,
film,
okay.
yeah.
Sure.
But also, I mean, just classic, he moves between genres. Not a lot of people will have seen The Pawnbroker with Rod Steiger. That's like a personal favorite of mine. That's like low-key a super slept-on movie, I think. Fantastic performance, obviously adapted from a play, so it's a little bit different. Network, as you've said, we've done this. Serpico. Another super slept-on film, Prince of the City with Treat Williams. Like
Long Day's Journey into Night. Very famous play/movie.
Yeah, and this was a guy who pretty much he did like in a peak of his powers, which spans 3 decades. He did like a film a year. You have to understand that. Like this guy made a movie a year. Every year he would sit down and do something, and a lot of the movies he made were like really fantastic. 80s, the Verdict with Paul Newman, of course. So, I mean, he is a super slept-on director who has woven between all these different genres down the years and put out, like, consistently good work. And was working, right up until, I mean, what year did he die? It was, like,
2010. I guess, like, 2010 or something?
Yeah.
Like that would make sense, I think.
Well, he was making movies pretty much
2011.
for the last couple of years. Yeah, there you go. So I mean, just a stellar like talent in terms of directing, who definitely deserves his flowers and his plaudits.
Well, I think this is a mega slept-on director, because what I would say is this: I think Richard nailed one thing quite key, which is on the face of it, one of the reasons why, if you're someone who's a fan who doesn't know him by name, you're going to think like, oh, maybe they're overrated, this guy's, because you're going to see he's done a million movies. He's like a Hitchcock who was just doing projects all the time. But I would say what makes him incredible is, like Hitchcock, yes, they do the movies that are just the ones to keep the lights on. Like they do a movie that's just an all right movie, or one that doesn't have the best actor or script. But then they still also do the masterpieces that the guys like a Kubrick, who only sit and do the masterpieces, do. It's just they also do movies in between. It's like those great bands from the 70s where they had to just keep doing all the fucking albums to tour to keep doing the music business. So as a result, if people don't know, the reason the 70s is basically the best era of music is because to actually just be like Led Zeppelin, you have to do an album a year. Whereas if you're like a modern band like Tool or something, you you can sit for 15 years and do nothing. So he's one of these guys where he's just a mega craftsman. Like he makes the mega masterpieces like the 12 Angry Men or fucking Network or Serpico. But then along the way, these filler films are still good as well, as long as you understand the expectations aren't that they're all like fucking Godfather, basically. But he does do his Godfathers, and I agree. I actually think a mega slept on guy because people, for some reason, his name's not even up there with the Scorsese's of the world, whereas actually he might even be better. And then if you want a movie that I would even say, if we do like a later series where we get to like pick our own, there's a movie he did like 4 years before he died, the one we call Before the Devil Knows You're Dead with Philip Seymour Hoffman, that I think is mega. It's actually just a really fucking good movie. So that one's like when he must be really old. So think about like going from 12 Angry Men in the 50s to you're doing a banger movie in 2007. Like no one has that longevity. You pick any great director ever, no one has like 50 years, mate. That's too much. That's insane.
And crucially, with so much output, you might find directors that, they did a good movie like every decade for 4 or 5 decades, but they didn't bang out 6 other movies, 9 of the movies that over that decade.
Exactly.
As well.
It's also he didn't like fall off and have actors, elite actors not want to work with him any longer. Like he spent his entire career basically working with cream of the crop actors, like you said, Thorin. Even in his last film, it was Philip Seymour Hoffman, Ethan Hawke, Marissa Tomei, and Albert Finney. What a fucking great cast, right?
I'm just looking at this penultimate movie. This is how good Sidney Lumet is. He did that fucking Find Me Guilty with Vin Diesel, where you actually realize Vin Diesel can act. Like he managed to coax a good performance out of Vin Diesel.
I want to talk about this with Sidney Lumet in particular, because for me, he is one of the most similar to a theater director, like a live theater director, in cinema, right? He's one of them that not only has he done a lot of films that have been adapted from plays or are written like by David Mamet, who is a very famous playwright, obviously done a bunch of films as well, but primarily known as a playwright in terms of the output of his career. But you look at this film, and while this was not a play, when you watch this, you could very easily imagine this being on stage because the vast majority of it just happens in one location. And you could actually stage this very effectively simply by having a bank scene on stage and having phone calls with the police officers, have the police officers in a separate corner of the stage or a part of the set that illuminates when they're talking to the police officers. And it really is very theatrical in terms of its scope, because a lot of his work is about the performances of the actors, and it really his work really relies on them having good performances to drive the film. There's not a lot of fancy editing. It's long scenes of dialogue, it's interaction between characters, and so much of it so many of his movies either were a play first or you could easily imagine like this one being on stage.
I'll do you one better, because the Zoomers will appreciate this. He might conceivably be the first social justice film director, because if you look at his body of work that he did, he's somebody who grew up in fucking Depression era New York, right? A lot of his movies are about social issues. This is about social issues.
Yeah.
Like when we're about to get into it now. And, you think about Serpico and the corruption in the police force, police informants coming forward and they're not even safe. This is the director that adapted The Wiz, which is, of course, the all-black cast musical of The Wizard of Oz. He adapted that to the screen from Broadway. So this is a guy, actually, that, like, if there's a lot of people who, it's kind of interesting. Like, one of the things I hate about modern film criticism, and I'm definitely not going to name many YouTubers with millions of subscribers here, but there's definitely plenty of them. They only look at film critique through the lens of, are you inserting, this woke or whatever the blase term we're using for it now? They only review the movie in that lens, and it's like, actually, if you want to go back in time and look at a director that doesn't like shove really over the top social messaging down your throat while presenting a really good movie, and has this naturalistic shooting style, it's Sidney Lumet. And I'll also add as well, just finally, I think one of the reasons he coaxes so many good performances out of his actors historically down the years is it is that type of project that is going to get an actor's interest. You know, if we're doing a social issue movie, I'm going to bring my fucking A game. Particularly, you know, all of his films have like award-winning monologues in them. You know, like it is real good stuff to get your teeth into as an actor. So yeah, I mean, look, if you were to pick like Sidney Lumet's top 5 movies, they are all concerned with, you know, anti-Semitism, poverty, police corruption. And in this film, I mean, we even get into, you know, the transgender issue. We get into, you know, like people who've been pushed to the fringes of society, what happens to veterans when they get back from America. There's also a meta commentary on the nature of media and how, like, if you can come off as a bit more likable and in line with the social issues, you might just get to live in a bank robbery, unlike some of your Confederates. So, I mean, this movie, based on a true story, and I've researched all of that as well. I'm ready to go for this episode.
Awesome of that.
Yeah. Like this movie is a social issue movie that just happens to have a bank robbery at the center of it.
By the way, I was actually going to say, here's an angle that you will very rarely get from me, but here's a good one. Normally, I do the opposite of this, right? Because I'm the man in this particular analogy. But in this case, you're going to get a chance to do the opposite. So basically, here's the hook to get your girl to watch this movie with you. Tell her it's not really about a heist. It's not like the things you might think of as typically masculine in a heist movie, you know, planning and sitting down and people executing things and being special forces and you knew the trick. No, it's not any of that. It's none of the stuff that basically is the super nerdy stuff that normally. Essentially, it's the other way around. It's actually the conceit is it's a heist, but then it's actually about these people and what they're going through in their lives and their own social psychodrama. And literally, it's all the stuff that like basically would be in a chick flick, like all their feelings and what they're going through in their baggage and their trauma and their relationships. And did you know actually he's also got a wife there and he's cheating with her, but he actually loves both of them, but he can't decide between. It's literally you're going to love this film. Like literally, tell them watch this part of the episode. You're going to fucking love this. But the reason I say that this is the hook I'm going to give you uniquely is I like to do the opposite. I like to find the movies. I've got a whole bunch of them. I'll probably do a list for you one day, guys, where it's the other way around. It's movies you can get your girl to watch, but you're tricking her, and it's the other way around. You backdoor in there. So I get the movies that look like a rom-com, but then it turns out it is secretly about time travel, and he actually was from the future. I like to do that. I like to do the opposite way around. So this is the one time where we're going to play it straight up, guys. You can actually just welcome them into the movie. Because by the way, this movie, that's why actually the joke is, if someone was going to complain about any movie in the series, it should be this one, because it's not really a heist film, is it? Like I say, if that's the excuse to get you in to see this incredible worldview of these people. And actually, I think one of the best things about the film is that it isn't, like I say, about all weird technical details or like even, it's not even about action sequences. There barely are any action sequences in the films, like 2 or 3, and they're incredibly drawn out, slow and iconic. So actually, to me, the interesting thing is, that's why the thing you said at the beginning is very apt. This absolutely could be quite literally just a 2-man or 3-man like fucking stage play. Like you'd only need is like one bad guy and the 2 robbers and then a phone, like you see, you didn't have to do another voice, could be off stage, me and the cops here, we're coming in soon, you know. You could do like 90% of the whole movie and have it be just as good if the performances were as good as these. And obviously the performances carry this film.
Yeah. And if you guys want to see a great acting performance, obviously this performance by Al Pacino is legendary. Like he is just so fucking good in this movie, and you often hear about like this mentioned as one of the greatest performances in cinema, which I think is very much deserved, because the subtlety that this role requires, being based on this real event, it's a very bizarre event that happens. And I think what's so interesting about it is just like the real crime, the real heist and robbery that this comes from, it just kind of unravels before you, and there's just layers to these characters that you would not have anticipated once you start this movie. Like, if you haven't seen it, guys, you will be really surprised by where this goes, particularly for a film that was made in 1975. Right.
Yeah. I mean,
this film's like 50 years old next year. You would not expect a lot of these themes to be in there.
It's a Coen Brothers movie, but when
that's a good analogy.
When the text crawl says it's a real story, it ain't lying. You know, but it's very hard to believe that this movie didn't inspire the Coen brothers on some level. So look, Monty, I'll let you do the plot. Let's get that out the way. I mean, it's relatively
look, there's actually not that much plot, is the thing. Like, this is not a plot-driven movie. This is entirely about the interactions between the characters. But the basic thrust of it is this. Al Pacino plays a guy named Sonny. He has a couple of accomplices. The one who stays is named Sal. So there's 3 of them that are going to go to rob this bank in Brooklyn, right? And they go in because they think they have information about when a cash pickup, like a cash drop, is going to be made. So they're going to go grab it before the money is picked up after it's been deposited in the bank. One of the guys gets scared and fucks off, so it's just Sonny and Sal in the bank the whole time. They arrive, realize that the cash has already been picked up, so there's basically nothing in the bank anymore. People outside get suspicious about there's smoke coming out of the building because he decides to burn a book inside of it. They get suspicious. They call the cops. Now, the entire rest of the film is just cops surrounding the building with a hostage crisis on the inside. There is no heist, guys. Like, it is a heist in that they attempt to steal money, but really what happens is that there's a hostage crisis with the bank employees and Sonny and Sal, and it's a series of conversations between various police and FBI officers with Sonny, because Sal doesn't really go outside, and over time it is revealed the motivations that these characters have behind wanting to get this heist. Sonny, it turns out, has a ex-wife who he had kids with, but is now in a relationship with a man named Leon, who is played by Chris Sarandon, stupid
sexy vampire from fucking
the stupid sexy vampire. Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Stupid sexy vampire is back.
You will not be able to unsee him in that role when you watch him in this now.
Yeah. And by the way, he's excellent. He's
great in this. Sure. He's great. Yeah, so he plays Leon, Sonny's male lover. And Sonny has promised him a gender reassignment surgery, so is trying to get money from this theft in order to do that. So eventually they manage to negotiate a car to take them to a plane to effectively escape America. Once they arrive at the airport, the cops trap them, kill Sal, take Sonny hostage, and it ends with him basically just captured by the police on the tarmac of a New York City airport. So that's it. Like, it's not actually, there's not a lot of action that happens. It's more interesting, the dialogue, the acting, and the references that are made by the characters, in particular to social issues of the time.
To make this point, I even did a quick timeline for you. So here's how it goes, right? Even though the movie begins with a really slow burn beginning, with no explanation, no exposition, there's coming into a bank, people are going about their normal business, right? Within 10 minutes, they've already got the tension of like, right, they're starting to hold this bank up. The cops are there like 15 or 16 minutes into the film. 42 minutes in, the Sal character, who's the one with the gun, is contemplating he might have to kill himself rather than go back to prison. And it's a 2-hour film, guys. It's like 2 hours, 5 minutes. That's 40 minutes in. One of them is basically like, by the way, if this doesn't work out, I'm killing myself and everything. Like, that's, so the rest of the movie is just like we say, it's just, this is just a conceit to get you into their world. But the joke is, if anything, I would describe this film as you're in there with them. You get to feel like you're simultaneously a hostage, the people taking them hostage, and you get the view of the outside angle of it as well. So I think this whole movie is a masterclass of like tension, intrigue, letting it go back down and be every day, ratcheting it back up again to a high point of fun, and then letting it go back down again. It's so incredible how he like plays with like the tension of the characters. Amazing.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, we've already talked about, like, Al Pacino's performance. I mean, like, the nervous energy that he exudes. He's always got a flop sweat on. I don't even know how the fuck you do that. Like, do you have to spray him between takes or whatever? Like, it's really, he just looks like, he was a desperate person sort of going into it, and then that desperation is just like, it's pouring through his face, and these layers of sweat, and his hair's getting progressively greasier and stuff. And then obviously, the great John Cazale, died way too soon as Sal. He's sort of the opposite, part of it, which is, he's like, he like, Sonny is clearly the leader, and Sal is clearly the follower.
He's kind of like dumb and stoic.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not on the same intellectual capacity as Sonny, and he's not as charismatic. And when things start going wrong for him, he starts saying, stuff like, are we really gonna put the bodies out? Are we really gonna kill people? And it's just like this weird dynamic that the two have that makes it interesting.
Are you serious about what you said?
About what?
About throwing those bodies out the door.
But I'll add to this. All of the hostages, the mainly women hostages in the bank who work as the tellers, what's great is there's always these little developments. It's like a very sort of human drama. It's like, someone needs the toilet, right? Or someone's, got asthma, or someone's husband chose, well, whatever it is. And now we have to deal with that. And Sonny's, you can see the cogs always turning. Like, if I open this door, if I release a hostage, what's going to happen to me? Am I safe? Am I going to get killed? And he's got his own paranoia, because obviously the real life Attica prison shooting, he keeps referencing it. And this crowd gathers outside, and obviously there's that famous scene where he's screaming, like the police officer walks in on him with a gun. He goes, "This pig wants to kill me so bad he can taste it. Attica! Attica!"
Back there, man! Get over there, will ya? He wants to kill me so bad he can taste it.
I know he's gonna kill me.
Attica! Attica!
Will ya?
Attica! 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 Attica!
And all the crowd are like, yeah, actually, the police.
Yeah, because like this is, I do want to talk about this, because like we do have to provide context for the Attica prison riots, which happened in 1971. Now remember, this
Another real
film,
event, of course,
yeah, it was a real event that people would have been highly aware of at the time. Yep. And if you don't know about this, you can't really appreciate the fact that Sal is saying like he would rather kill himself than go back to prison, because it turns out that American prison 50 years ago was even worse than it was today. And there was a real issue with prisoner rights. And what happened with Attica prison was a New York prison. So remember, this takes place in New York City.
Good old
and
New York's finest at it again.
Attica is a prison in upstate New York, which is everything north of New York City, but it's technically like in the very far like western side of New York State. And this prison riot was basically a bunch of the prisoners rising up because of their treatment, and then kind of taking hostages of the corrections officers. And this was during the Nixon presidential administration. And they kind of okayed a plan by the state to retake the prison by force, which meant that they not only killed a bunch of the inmates, but they actually killed a bunch of the correctional officers as well in the giant battle that took place inside this prison. So it's like, it was a really crazy event. And it actually did lead to like meaningful prison reforms within New York, and I think broader in terms of America. But you can see that, this was not a popular response at the time, right? And this was also a period that was going through America in the 70s was going through some pretty severe unrest, especially due to the Vietnam War and like various other riots and clashes with police. And so when you have this crowd of people gathering as looky-loos, which, by the way, having lived in New York and having lived in Brooklyn, is the most New York shit of all time. It's like, this absolutely would just draw people in a giant crowd to just for entertainment purposes to watch how this kind of, bank siege played out. So it's actually, and New Yorkers will back me up, this is actually a very believable scene in New York City. But you can see how this crowd would have responded to the police at the time, because the police were not particularly popular, and the National Guard were not particularly popular in this era for the crackdowns and the brutality that had been seen against these riots. And while it was a prison and there were prisoners who were taking hostages, and clearly like you kind of have to deal with that in some way, the backlash was just so severe, even though they were convicted felons, that this, him screaming Attica to the crowd and them cheering is a very believable thing, and also colors why these guys themselves are so scared of going back to prison, because prison treatment was absolute shit. And you may even get killed even if you are in prison, just because that could be something that happens, right? So there's no real guarantee of safety there either. So that is some of the history behind why he's just yelling Attica, if you don't know.
Yeah, and as well, I read into the whole build-up to what happened prior to that, and basically the inmates were like being held in these like brutal conditions, like 16-hour days in your cells, no access to like no form of any privacy, all their incoming mail, being like scanned. They had no religious like freedom. There was no like prayer areas for them or anything. A lot of people obviously convert to religion when they're in prison. And they listed they tried talking to the warden and then the state governor, and they were just like, look, can we just get like, these are the demands, can we just get like better conditions? And they were like, absolutely not. No, you can't. And then obviously that's what led to the uprising. It wasn't that the prisoners immediately said, right, fuck it, violence, let's have a like. They had gone through so many procedures to try and just improve the overall conditions, and they'd been denied because obviously this was a time in a Nixonian government where one of the things Nixon did campaign on was being tough on crime, tough on prisoners, that kind of thing, tough in Vietnam. He wanted to present that strongman image. So all the Nixonites that were kind of like in these positions of power, they were pretty brutal, not very nice people. It's why the Nixon government and then the Nixon era in general, all the way through to Watergate, isn't remembered as a particularly, bright time in American history.
Right. By the way, it's since we're still setting up the film, I would just say on the two actors, like on the Pacino angle, what's interesting is I remember this as obviously one of the most iconic performances he did, but the shocking thing is how few films he'd made before this. Like he's made some of the big ones like The Godfather and Serpico, but he hasn't done that many films at this point in time. He's still very young in his career. And one of the things I think contrasts so well is obviously in this series, you're going to have already watched Heat, right? Which is like the zenith of where his acting career goes, but it's such a different performance. Like the difference is he does master in his older roles being like a more world-wise person who is a bit more sage and can access anger but in like a controlled fashion and has like a suave element. In this, the best thing is he comes off as so earnest and like has this crazy intensity, but where he is like nervous, like what you were saying there, Richard, like the amount of times in this film he'll just have a thing where just a wide-eyed look just conveys everything. He doesn't even need to say anything. You can almost sense yourself all the thoughts and intrusive things he's thinking and the questioning himself. Because one thing that you were alluding to that I think is done brilliantly in this film is I guarantee this is a film where people who believe in like a postmodern way of looking at art are going to hate this film, because you're going to watch it and you're going to immediately say stupid like internet reply guy stuff like, oh, so they're being held hostage and they're complaining about needing to go to the toilet. That's the most realistic part of the film, is that what they essentially explain to you is, because you're watching a film, right, which is by definition a condensed narrative, for you, someone could maintain like an hour or two where you'd be on high tension on the edge. In real life, if this thing lasts 12 hours, once you're like an hour or two in and you have had like 4 cups of coffee and you need to go to the fucking toilet, you're eventually just going to say to the guy, like someone would, like, just shoot me at this point in time or let me fucking go to the toilet. Like that is actually the human reaction. By the way, it's even why this whole aspect that they make you down in the minutiae, the day to day, and eventually people like Sonny are just essentially having to like solve problems for people in the scenario they've created. The reason why that's done so brilliantly is because then it's totally believable. Remember, one of the weirdest phenomenon ever for someone who's never been in a heist environment like all of us is how could Stockholm Syndrome ever exist? How could you ever at any point identify with the people who've put your life at risk? In fact, in this case, they're threatening to kill you as a way to enforce their own authority and power in this scenario. You'd think to yourself, look, maybe you'd lie to them in the scenario, but you'd never actually believe it. No, this is how you could, because they're able to identify with these characters because they come off like normal people too. And very quickly, even their facade of like, I'm just a bank robber, I'll do anything, like, watch out, be scared of me. That facade falls down within like 10 minutes, 20 minutes in the film. Like the joke is they can even see that the Sal guy's a fucking nutter and also, just leave him on the corner on his own.
The body is the temple of the Lord.
You're serious? So you rob a bank, but you keep your body pure. Is that it?
I even think a brilliant angle I was going to bring up as well is if you did just watch Heat, how insanely do the two fucking opening scenes parallel? So Heat is all people coming in on a time, hit your mark, do this, say this. That's all you need. This is exactly the right thing. This is efficient. What I'm doing here, you don't need to understand because I've already checked out the cameras and the timing. This is like someone coming in. And remember, when they go in, people are going to forget this. There's 3 of them at the beginning. One of them just instantly bails, like completely.
And he has to remind him not to take the getaway car.
The second that happens, you already know this heist is fucked, mate. Literally, 1 minute in, you're already done. You're cooked. So, like, you already know this is not Heat. You are not watching the opening scene of fucking The Dark Knight. This is going the other direction.
What?
I'm not gonna make it, Sonny.
What are you talking about? Put it on.
I can't do it, Sonny.
Oh, fuck me. Sal. What? Where are you?
Same shit, man. If Trejo had come along, they never would have gotten the. It's always the fucking getaway driver bailing that scuttles the entire heist.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, to be fair as well, like what was interesting was, I mean, and again, this is apparently true to the character in real life, but Sonny thought that he was going to be able to, with his limited bank knowledge of having worked as a teller temporarily in the many jobs that he'd had over his life, he thought he was going to be able to, know all of the like ins and outs. And he comes in and, he doesn't check all the desks. So all of a sudden that's like probably an alarm potentially triggered. And then they're on camera and then they're spraying over it. You're already on. Right, they spray paint over the cameras. You've already been filmed. I mean, it's pointless at that point. What, they can't rewind? Like it's all on tape.
Hey, we know from the Thomas Crown affair, they can't actually rewind the tape to see when the crime happened.
He starts a fire, which alerts attention to the guy who's like he works in insurance and comes in the bank like every lunchtime just to see how everyone's doing. It's a fucking shit show, and it's a shit show. Like basically, as Duncan said earlier, within 15 minutes, it's done.
Well,
like it's not a heist anymore. It is a hostage situation, and the goal isn't how do I get all the money out of the fucking bank. The goal is how the fuck do I get out without getting shot by the New York Police Department? Who, by the way, I don't think there was a single police officer stayed at home this day.
Oh, it's mental, isn't it?
There's like, they're unironically about 80 police
it's mad.
officers.
It is. It's one team almost.
This is. I cannot describe to you. This is a highly believable New York City clown fiesta, guys. Like this is just what happens in New York City. When something weird starts happening, it just attracts everybody in the city to it, and you just kind of all sit and stare. Even if they're cops, like all the cops are just like, oh, I guess I'll just show up too and just stare at this thing. It's just it is a weird part of the city culture.
Another reason, like I said, that I actually think if women who like dramas and soap opera type stuff are going to love this movie is because it even has these like real life elements that are just actually so hilarious because of how jarring the juxtaposition is. Like when he's on the phone with his wife, who finally he contacts, she is just nagging his ear off and he's basically telling like, shut the fuck up. Like
they're going to shoot me or something.
No, they're not going to shoot you.
You should see it on the TV. They got cannon. They got machine guns. They're loaded with bear.
They were after me, Angie, not you,
It's late already. By the time I find out, it's just you and Sal. I mean, I can't get a babysitter. What am I going to do?
Like in the middle of a fucking heist where like they're trying to talk you down off the ledge, as it were. Like no, it's so the thing is, the joke is, even though it's a movie and it's such a ridiculous conceit of a premise, like it's actually an incredibly human film. This one actually is just about like you can relate to all these relationships and the kinds of people these are. And in fact, the joke of the movie as well is it also does try to sort of hit that emphatic point towards the end, which I have always thought is the problem with these scenarios. Is essentially in that scenario, right? Everything that's happened is largely in your mind. You haven't actually killed people. You haven't actually stolen anything yet. In fact, it turns out there was nothing to steal. All you've really done is you've both gotten into a really fucked up headspace, and then you've forced people to be aware that you're in the situation. And essentially, the real problem is you can't walk it back. Like that's another thing about this film is once you get into the film and you realize he's never really going to get away, and they're never going to get any money, and at the same time they're not going to kill the hostages, then it becomes an interesting dynamic. Think what a unique twist this is. The twist at the end is, don't you want sort of all of them to get away and no one to get get killed, which is a very unique ending to this sort of a scenario. Normally you're supposed to want the bad guys to get killed to free the good guys, whereas in this scenario, we all get Stockholm Syndrome. By the end, we all sort of do wish, like they're saying on those phone calls, like, can't we just sort of like put the genie back in the bottle? Can't we unwind this and just, say it was all a mistake and come back? And obviously everyone's mentally ill, so can't we all just live again? You even feel like that at the end. You're bargaining like they are, trying to find some way out, and there is no way out. By the way, the most haunting line in this movie is the one he says, not even that far into the film, where he just says, I've gone so far with this, why would I give up now? Which is basically, like, unfortunately, the refrain of the film. Whereas actually the point is, he should essentially have given up at every possible opportunity, and it never had to go this far.
Yeah. And also, like, I think that what's so fascinating about this movie is like the because look, him yelling Attica to rile up the crowd is obviously cheap theatrics to win sympathy amongst the people who would have hated that, and to actually, and that's helpful to his cause because it's reminding people of what happens to prisoners, which then turns the crowd kind of against the police in this situation. And the police obviously are highly conscious that a riot could happen if they kill the popular guy. You know what I mean? Because he doesn't come out. He doesn't actually appear threatening in any of the scenes because Sal is the one inside with the gun. And so when he's coming out, for the most part, he's just he's actually giving up hostages, or he's having discussions with the police officers very publicly. So as far as the audience of the civilians is concerned, he's a super likable guy. He's literally on the phone with TV stations, like being relatable. Like, they don't like him cursing, but he is relatable. He has his wife. He has his husband who's there, who's trying to talk on the phone with him, and these are people who obviously care about him. And I think, this is a commentary, obviously, on criminality, and showing people have depth, because especially he's not Macaulay, dude. He's not some sort of hardened criminal who has been doing this for decades. He is a kind of dumbass who got himself into a bad situation, but he's ostensibly doing this to get something for somebody he loves. Right? At the end of the day, he's trying to get money for the gender reassignment surgery to make somebody else happy. And he didn't intend for this to become a hostage crisis. He's just kind of forced into this situation. And he obviously handles it badly, and it escalates to the point.
By the way, there's also what I love, Monty, is like you can't ever escape like the human aspect of, like, remember in a movie, people would just let you give the massive speech and make the great point. But what's hilarious is it's the way, even when he's trying to explain why he did it for like the Leon guy, the guy's like, I didn't ask you to do it. It's like, I know you didn't fucking ask me to. Like, oh, fucking bloody hell, I can't even get a W now, boys. I'm fucking can't even get one, can you?
That is a great scene though, where they're just like the Lovell's quarrels are fucking great in this movie. They add like a lot of comic relief to a very like high tension situation too. So it really like breaks up the pacing super nicely.
You want that fucking operation, right? You're giving me that shit. Everybody's giving me shit. Everybody needs money. You know what I mean? So you needed money. I got your money. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't ask you to go and rob a bank.
But I think that this is really a marvelous film because, if you were at the time, I mean, now it makes us sympathetic towards potential criminals or prisoners, but especially if you were at the time looking at the way the police were treating the Attica riot or the Kent State shootings, which happened in 1970 very famously, which was when a bunch of National Guard gunned down some college students who were protesting the Vietnam War. I mean, it's outrageous, what was going on in the early part of the 70s. And so I think you get to see that here. And it also touches on other fringe issues, such as obviously the gay community in New York City at this time, and the tensions that brings about, and the fact that, they have this relationship and they've had this wedding, but obviously marriage between two men is not legally recognized during this period. And he ends up getting sympathy and people coming to the heist to watch who are like cheering him on as members of the gay community of New York, which is like kind of fucking wild when you think about it. So it really like it goes to some very interesting places and still has a lot of social commentary that is relevant 50 years after this movie was made.
Oh, by the way, that's one thing I wanted to say. Like, that's where, to me, the appropriate segue is there to address some of the elements that are similar to Network, the other classic one that was made by Sidney Lumet. Because Network, if people don't know, everyone knows the iconic scene where he goes on the news and tells everyone, yeah, I want you to get mad and stay out the window and say, I can't take it anymore. But what people forget is the rest of that film, even itself, people forget this, dude, contained elements that were like that thing where the Black Panthers took that woman hostage and stuff. It's got all these like social elements that were clearly like of the time put into it that it's trying to address. And it's about things like the media landscape and how people react to the news and what the media does to you. Like, one of the elements of this film, quite clearly, is this notion that it wasn't just about a heist and people just rubbernecking. It became like a social phenomenon. And so the joke, like you're saying, is, dude, that could be Twitter. That's like a bunch of people like being like hashtag gays for Sonny or whatever. Like, we're with you, Sonny. They all turn up to a guy who's holding guys. They come along, we're with you, Sonny, we're with you. It's like, but you know that it's cause, this is the way the media works. They've almost been isolated on that one specific fraction of like, he's representing gay rights in this scenario, or he's a representative of the gay. They're ignoring the fact he's actually doing some criminal shit. He's got a machine gun, for example. Like, but yeah, that's so prescient for today and social media landscape and stuff. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the kind of commentary. Like, it becomes, you have this sick kind of feeling in your stomach. Like, obviously, you know they're not going to get away with it. Spoilers. Sorry if you haven't watched the film. But yeah, they're not going to get away with it.
They can't possibly get away with it, right?
No,
like it's ridiculous that they think they can.
It's not even really a spoiler.
Imagine being the person who hasn't watched enough films and they're just watching like, oh, sick, they got the plane. Oh my God, they really get away with it. Yeah, where they going? Like, or something like that.
I can't wait to see them in Cuba. This is going to be great. Well, I wonder what the sequel's going to be like. So anyway, but what you realize is that somewhere along the line, there has been this, tacit acceptance that we can't kill Sonny, right? Like, he's the popular one. He's doing the calls for the TV shows.
He's the one that's liked. Yeah.
He's got the social issues behind him. Because, I mean, by the way it's introduced, it is a crazy reveal, because Sonny's kind of alluding to he wants to talk to his wife and this kind of thing. And then when Leon turns up and you realize that, like, they're a gay relationship where Leon is going to have sex reassignment surgery so they can get married and live a life together, and they're on the phone, he's going, I'm doing this for you, Leon. And like, it's just perfect, because it's not built up in any way. It's not like designed to be shocking or salacious. It's not John Waters. It's just this is just what this guy was. It's like this is who he was in a relationship with, and this is what he said were his motivations for committing this crime.
Sonny, they're bringing in your wife.
Step back. Let's get back.
It's juxtaposed wonderfully, because obviously you can imagine all the very macho police, they've all got their commentary on it and they say, very unkind things, but actually everybody else is warming to Sonny because of this. The hostages are warming to Sonny. Everyone's warming to Sonny. It's like he's a super interesting guy. He's aware of social issues. He's screaming about Attica. He's robbing a bank. He's doing it for his partner. And you realize at the end that even Sonny's in on it. That Sal is going to be the
that's one of the saddest moments, isn't it?
Yeah.
That moment, Richard, I think they'll get lost because he doesn't say anything. Yeah. The moment where he just stops arguing against the fact that they're sort of telling him, like, basically, we like you, but we have to kill someone, so just let us kill the Sal guy. And obviously, you know that you're doing. He like gaslights. You're part of this, so we're going to give you the sign. Like, that is so dark when you realize, holy shit, he realizes himself that's the only way out of this.
And one of the things that I've never really seen a lot of this kind of discourse about this film. I mean, I'll get to why this film isn't as well known in a moment, because I've got some little interesting bits and pieces about that. But like, it's kind of interesting that I think nominally people walk away from this film going, kind of Sonny is a good guy, but it's like he made the deal.
Oh, betrayal's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. For him to get out. And keep in mind, by the way, Leon, his wife, even says to him, like, well, first of all, also, we're just glossing over the fact that he also has an estranged, like, wife and kids, which, like, so,
he's ditched, I mean, like, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. He's ditched. So we can go on and do this, right? But all right, fair enough. But he realizes that to get out of this, he has to sacrifice Sal. It is the only way he will get off the plane alive. And somewhere along the line, he becomes okay with it. And I don't see a lot of people really criticizing him for that. And it's clear that Sal is educationally subnormal.
Yep.
Very easily led, highly strung, probably didn't even want to be there in the first place. Like, what's Sal's motivation for doing this? Right? Has he got a partner that needs a gender reassignment surgery? No, he's going along because of Sonny. Same as probably the kid that left right at the start. So it's really baked in, and that Sonny is sort of a manipulator.
Yes.
Throughout the movie, he manipulates the crowd with Attica. He manipulates all of the hostages. He manipulates the TV show, manipulates the police officers. He manipulated Sal. He manipulated the kid. And he walks away with it because he is essentially a master of manipulations. The only reason he makes it through the end of the film. And I've never seen that kind of like take. I've never seen it. I've never seen someone go like,
yes.
Sonny's actually kind of a bad dude. Like,
yes,
you know? I've never seen that, and I guess it's Al Pacino's performance really that you just love him, don't you?
No, this is actually also what I think is the weirdest part. Is like I thought the same thing when I watched it. It's like when I rewatched it, that was the part I didn't remember. I remember that the end they get shot and that they try to escape. So I didn't remember the part where like he essentially tacitly does go along with the plan. And by the way, never ever warns the Sal guy at any point in the movie this is going on. By the way, like keeps that completely separate because you can tell he's not sure what's going to happen with that like sort of a part of the plot as it were. And one of the points of why I think is, it's like you just said, it's because of who's cast as who, mate. You have got incredibly compelling, magnetic fucking charisma of Al Pacino in his like initial blossoming where he's got this ability to emote so well on camera and to still seem like insecure, but at the same time a likable figure. Meanwhile, the person they've cast as the other incredible. If people don't know, I'm just going to pop a bubble for a bit right now. I could do the same thing everyone does in the meme, which is you say, you know, technically, guys, you guys don't know John Cazale. He's only the GOAT of cinema. And the reason why he's the GOAT is because his resume is The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, Dog Day Afternoon, The Day Hunter, and then he just dies like some sort of nightmare fucking 27 Club style, like, I will die so you will never know whether I would have been good or bad. Or you'll just be able to perfectly preserve me forever as like Cobain style, like maybe I was the greatest ever. And so the joke is he isn't obviously the GOAT. He has the GOAT resume, but if you watch him in these films, he's not the main person. He's often a character actor, obviously. But the reason why he's perfectly cast, just as he is in The Godfather, is if you want to cast someone as a down and out loser who you are not supposed to relate to, this is your fucking man. He is the best one ever. Even aesthetically, he has that like weird sort of a fucking like ping pong ball head with like thinning hair, even in his youth. He's got a really weird sort of face. He's just a guy where the joke is before he's even opened his mouth, you're already sort of like, fuck this guy. And that's why he is Fredo. And of course, you know he should be killed by Pacino in The Godfather. In this particular scenario, here's the thing, Richard, you're right. I've never actually had any reason aside from early on, he points a gun at people and says, we might have to kill him and pile the bodies up. Aside from that, I have no reason to assume this person's a bad person, or he doesn't have a backstory, or he doesn't have his own reasons, or maybe, like you say, maybe he's not even capable of conceiving of the bad he's doing. I'm not supposed to ever think that. What I'm supposed to think is, don't worry about that. Misdirection. Look at Pacino. Isn't he awesome? Isn't he funny? Isn't he great? Isn't he socially turned on? I hope he lives. Oh, we have to sacrifice someone. Well, I guess the patsy's got to be this daft cunt, hasn't it?
Yeah. In fact,
don't tell me anything about me. That might make it harder for us to have him killed. Like, it actually is a like mad, dark sort of underpinning to the end of the film, really.
Yeah, I love.
Especially if you're just not the person who's good looking or charismatic, you deserve to die. That is actually the message of the film.
Yeah, like John Cazale. I mean, like again, it's like you say. I mean, you know, when you talk about like the people that we lost, like early, you know, he was only 42, which obviously in acting terms, you know, he would have gone further. But like the way he went out was like he did do it like a fucking boss because you know he was a theater actor. He'd spent years on off-Broadway shit. You know, doing all these plays. And then basically when he got the diagnosis and they said, you know, it's like, it's lung cancer, it's super late. You're definitely not pulling out of this one. He went back to the stage, and this is obviously after the success of Dog Day Afternoon, where I think he got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. And he went and did a Broadway play. He did the Agamemnon, which I know Christopher will be very familiar with. But he did Agamemnon and then was turning up to the Deer Hunter, which, by the way, is the last fucking film
I know.
Right, and you can see he's ill in the movie, but again, he plays the dickhead who's pointing a loaded revolver at people, to Vietnam vets with PTSD who were made to put revolvers to their own heads while their fucking captors bet on them. So, by the way, Deer Hunter, fucking banger movie. I mean, it's like you said, this guy, we'll never know if he would have got over the typecasting.
We can't. Yeah.
But what I will say is, in terms of playing the role of the want to be masculine male who could never
the
quite
ultimate
do
Peter.
it.
Yeah, he's the unlucky loser, isn't he? He's the guy you're supposed to sort of half-heartedly feel sorry for, but you yourself know they're supposed to lose, aren't they? Come on.
And you know, he always did subtle shades. It wasn't cookie cutter. They were all losers in very different ways. You know, like say, Sal is a sort of monosyllabic, you know, very like agitated, educationally subnormal guy who's, you know, like being led by Sonny and descends into panic. Fredo obviously having to live in the shadow of the fact that he was passed over because he just doesn't have it to be, you know, the head of the family, and then obviously the betrayal in part 2, and then as I said in the Deer Hunter where he plays Stanley. He's the fucking guy who like goes on this hunting trip with all these Vietnam vets and big bushy bearded dudes, and like he's just a city slicker pussy, you know. So
yes.
Just really a fantastic actor. Like definitely taken too soon. And oh, by the way, just to add to his accolades, you know, we were talking about that Congress thing where they put all the films in, you know, forever.
Library of Congress. Yeah.
The Library of Congress. Every single one of his movies is in there.
Damn.
So that's who he was, you know. So yeah, super sad, but he's fantastic in this. I mean, really, really good. And him. Oh, by the way, if you watch documentaries of like Pacino, De Niro, all the great actors who worked with him down the years, they all say the same thing, that when you did a scene with him, he was so easy to work with, but he always gave you so much that you naturally raised your game. And it's, you know, not a coincidence. Like obviously Coppola cast him in 3 films. You know, Sidney Lumet, Cimino. You know, he worked with some of the best directors. Like they could all see what I think anyone, even like a, you know, casual can see, that this guy, like he feels real. Like, you know, 100%. There's a realism to his performances. So,
by the way, one thing about this film as well that I think they do an amazing job of portraying is like, bearing in mind, there are, like we say, there aren't actually that many action sequences. They actually are able to show a man within one day lose absolutely everything. So he starts out as the premise of, remember, the premise of the film, guys, is it's an in and out robbery. It's like a 10-minute robbery. You go in, bing, bang, bong, you get in and out before the fucking timers go off and before the cops get called. You've got the money, you're out. And here's the thing I think a modern fan won't understand is in this era, it's this early, like this film's out in 75, guys. So the story happened in the early 70s. This isn't like the modern day with the internet. Like there aren't like satellites and shit. Like no one, if you get in and out and you do it the right way, you will never get caught. No one will ever know who you are. It'll be way harder to track you. It's not like a thing where you're on camera, then there's cameras everywhere. There weren't video cameras back then. Like that was a famous thing about the world. Like, that was the thing that came in the late 80s and the 90s. So back then, it's not even the actual premise of the robbery isn't insane. Like it could have worked. But once it gets delayed, well, the worst part is then you lose the money because it turns out there isn't the money. So you've lost the money, the purpose of doing it, right? Then you get the scenario where, because now you've waited too long as well by holding them hostage, now you've lost your anonymity. Now you can't flee and go elsewhere. By the way, you could have still left when there was no money and immediately just gone, right, fuck it, call off and leave and go, and I hope you just get away with it. Maybe some of your identities aren't obvious, or maybe you use code names or something. Then later on, you get this scenario where, because he's doing the phone calls, he now loses all of his relationships. So the man that he did this for, to get the assignment, basically himself has already betrayed him to the police. And even that hilarious part of the conversation, like, wait a minute, Leon, this whole thing was on the... Yeah, obviously it's on the... And then, are they off the phone now? Like, mate, they're never off the phone is them, you daft cunt. They're not hanging the phone up so you can have a private conversation. Like, you're being listened to the whole time. And yes, this guy has absolutely fucking dicked you. He's just made you tell all that embarrassing stuff to a bunch of cops on the line. Like, hey, let's get a load of this shit. Like, that is happening. So you lost that relationship. By the way, you did it for this fucking person, and he's even thrown it back in your face like a lover's quarrel. Like, I didn't ask you to do it. Why are you doing that on my behalf? Like, bloody hell, I'm just...
Are they on the phone now?
Yeah.
That's great, Leon. You know, that's really terrific. You talk to me with them on the phone. That's really smart.
Well, I don't have a choice.
What do you mean you didn't have a choice?
Well, what am I supposed to do? I mean, they're standing all around me. There's 7,000 fucking cops all around me.
Then is even his wife that he's left, she's calling him up. That's fucking a massive hassle as well. He's doing all that. And then by the end, it's like he has just lost everything. All he can do at the end is just let his mate get killed. That's it. Brilliant.
Yeah.
He just loses absolutely everything and over nothing. For nothing.
Also, I realized I got it wrong earlier. I'm like literally looking at this for the next thing I want to talk about. But he actually, John Cazale didn't get nominated for Best Supporting Actor. So it was Golden Globe. It wasn't Oscar. Chris Sarandon did though, which I think is super fucking interesting. Actually,
He's great in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows you what a good fucking. I absolutely don't hate that over John Cazale. I mean, they're both bringing, very different but super important performances to the movie and the overall dynamics of everything. Like Duncan says, those conversations with between Sarandon and Pacino are a fucking riot. And obviously they're not even in the same room with each other, but it works.
If you haven't watched the film yet, all you need to know is this. It's like the ultimate actor camps it up on set, like, well, that's Sonny, if you're going to be like that. But he just does the best version of
like that, Sonny.
that classic camped up style, but he just does the best stereotype of that. He nails it so hard. He kills it
perfectly. So look, this is why the movie isn't probably better known and more celebrated. It was super unlucky because it came out in 1975, and so it gets nominated for almost everything you can get nominated for, but it's impossible for it to win, right? So it gets nominated for Best Picture, but just listen to the other films it was up against this year. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Milos Forman. Barry Lyndon by Stanley Kubrick.
Okay, tough competition so far.
Jaws.
It's just over already. And
then obviously Robert Altman's Nashville as well, which was like
that at the end.
But that's a very good movie as well. So it's like I don't know what you're supposed to do. And obviously then you think about, okay, well, Al Pacino gets nominated for Best Actor. Who's beating Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that year? Like who? Like who? Like no one is. Obviously with the Best Supporting Actor, that was a bit of a stupid one that year because it didn't even go to Brad Dourif in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, who plays Billy. He should have definitely had the Oscar for that. But it went to fucking George Burns for some, I don't know, The Sunshine Boy, some dog shit film. I think people heard like George Burns was like dying or something.
Oh, right, it's one of those ones. Get him on the way out.
Yeah, he was 80 years old. I think he's the oldest. I think he's the oldest person to win an Oscar. For a supporting actor or whatever. But anyway, so the problem the movie has is even if you were to scan through, I'm gonna watch all the Oscar winning movies. There are some years, particularly in the 70s, the auteur era, and in the early 80s to a lesser extent, there's some kind of movie. There's just years that had 4 or 5 insane movies that came out this year.
As you say that, Richard, the year before was The Godfather Part 2 in Chinatown.
Yep.
In the same year.
Yeah,
I mean, that's crazy.
I mean, far be it from me to imply that with all this cape shit, and fucking Marvel and Disney and all this bullshit, we've gone backwards. I don't want to ever say that. Modern culture's great, but yeah, I mean, the 70s, people were crafting these insane movies every single year, and so to even win an Oscar at that time, you were generally up against very stiff competition. But 75 is just an insane year because no matter which angle you're coming at it from, if you're coming at it from performance, you're not beating One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. If you're coming at it from adaptation, you're probably not beating One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. If you're coming at it from popcorn, you're not beating Jaws. If you're coming at it from cinematography, you're not beating Barry Lyndon, where every shot in that movie is a fucking exquisite oil painting. So, what the fuck do you do? And it's this movie is a stellar movie. It is a 9 out of 10 film that has kind of fallen into obscurity because, it's just, it's early Al Pacino. Prefer him when he's going, prefer that stuff.
This is one of his best ever.
Totally, right?
Contender for his best. It's unbelievable. His performance is the movie, basically. It's unbelievable. That's why I say, I could totally see this as a theatre play, just a 2-man play. You could have an amazing
absolutely.
one. You had some sick actor in Al Pacino's role, of course.
Yeah, so it's strange because I think this movie is, as we've already established, it's super prescient. It's very ahead of its time. It's touching on social issues which haven't gone away. It was hugely financially successful as well. For such a transgressive movie, 3.5 million budget, and it made over 50 million at the box office.
Wow.
Right? In the fucking 70s.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to think that this movie would be so popular, considering it is just it's basically just a performance-driven play that's been filmed.
Yeah. I mean, and the reception it got was, I mean, it blew critics away. Everybody loved this film. Across the board. You won't find many dissenting voices from that. This film
was this one that Roger was fucking with. I'm guessing it was.
Our boy is here, Roger Ebert.
Come on.
He gave it 4 stars.
Ooh, okay.
And which is his highest.
That's his max,
scale, yeah. His scale only goes to 4. And I can I mean there's a bunch of paragraphs where he talks about, how it's a really good cast. It's got Lance Henriksen in this as well, right? Like,
oh, yes, true. Only as a minor role, but yeah, it's like one of the FBI type guys.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And there was like Broderick.
Which will that will fuck with your head, because when you see Lance Henriksen, you'll be like, oh, he's going to do some. It doesn't do anything like that. It's a really.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, I was going to say that, but he just
he does nothing. He almost doesn't even say anything in the film as well. Like, he just sits there, and
yeah.
Well, it's like seeing all those famous actors in Heat in weird roles, and you're like, wow, this person's really important. Are they going to do anything? Yeah. No, it's actually just Hank Azaria sitting there cucking somebody.
But I mean, yeah, basically his review is just a love letter to Lumet, like saying that, it's an actor's picture, but it wouldn't have been possible without the, delicate touch of Lumet as a director, and, goes on to sort of say, the last paragraph is Sidney Lumet is a master filmmaker. His book on directing joins David Mamet's 2 contrasting approaches to the subject, both written with clarity and conviction. Here he has created a film made brilliant by its deeply seen characters in a plot that could have obviously been cheapened and exploited, but is always human and true. Which, for once, fucking from beyond the grave, Roger's in alignment with us. He's come good. Nice one. The real Fourth Horseman. Roger Ebert, he's here. So, but it's spot on. I mean,
I just think the way he's the villain of this show, like our nemesis is Roger Ebert, who has been dead for decades at this point in time. It's almost a meme in itself. I know.
Yeah, no, I love it. As I said, we have to do with AI. He's going to be on soon.
He will be the Fourth Horseman, indeed.
Yeah, we'll write to his estate.
We'll rename the shows.
One thing I will say as well is I was like researching some of the real life stuff, because how like when movies say, oh, it's based on a true story, we all know the memes. It's very often not, and it has nothing to do with reality. And obviously the last kind of, text crawl about what happened in the aftermath is that, Sonny got 20 years and Leon is now living as a woman. And blah blah blah. So I looked into it.
I heard that they don't like it though. Like, they didn't like this movie being made about him though, right, or something like that. Or they thought they were misrepresented or something, wasn't it? Something like that?
I mean, there's a lot. Right, let's just start with the fact that, man, looking into the real life stuff was such a bummer.
It's not as cool, I'm imagining.
Nah, because I mean, right, so right. First of all, just to do the aftermath, because you think, well, 20 years in prison, he did try and rob a bank. It's cool about Leon. But anyway, so what happened was, because of all that popularity and everything, he totally cooperated with the police, and he got he was told by his attorneys and everyone, we've got you a plea deal. All you have to do is plead guilty, and he would have got a massively reduced sentence. And then the court refused to honor it.
Oh, what the fuck? That's like literally, it's already a movie that's like, we live in a society, and that's what you did in real life. You just actually fucked.
And again, that's what I'm talking about with the Nixonian era. No, this tough judge couldn't honor a plea deal his court had made, for this highly transgressive member of society. So that's how he got 20 years.
Fucking hell.
Now, to be fair, because sensibilities changed over the course, he only served 5 years. right? And so he got out in like late 78 or something, but then he violated parole and he went back inside and blah, blah. And anyway, Leon, whose I think real name was Eden in real life, she died of AIDS after the operation. She died in the 80s when AIDS obviously ravaged New York and the American government just let it happen. Yeah, I think Sonny was out of prison at that time, or he might have been in, but they let him out to go, and he delivered the eulogy at the funeral. And anyway, Sonny died in his early 60s, living with his mother, dead broke.
Oh, with his mother as well. Why?
I was like, fuck this, dude. I almost like, because it's after watching the movie as well, because I'd never like really looked into it, you know, like I never thought to even care. But yeah, it's a fucking downer, dude.
It's crazy for a movie that made $50 million that he didn't actually get a decent amount of money from them using his story for this.
Well, so I've got the Wikipedia bit about that. He said he wrote a letter to the New York Times out of concern that people would believe the movie version of events, which he said was only 30% accurate at best. His main objection was the inaccurate portrayal of his wife as a plain, overweight woman whose behavior drove him into the arms of Leon, when in fact he'd left her 2 years before he'd even met Leon.
Right.
Other concerns he had that were fictionalized in the movies were that he never spoke to his mother and that the police refused to let him speak to his wife, the wife that he was estranged from. In addition, the movie insinuated that he'd sold out to the police, and although Sonny claimed this was untrue, several attempts were made on his life when he was following an inmate screening of the movie in the prison he served time in.
Oh, so they saw him as like a snitch and thought like they were like to kill him
because of what we talked about, because he betrayed Sal, you know, because of all the popularity.
Dude, imagine having to be like, bro, that's just a movie. That's not even me. Remember when you, as Al Pacino, betrayed that guy? Like, I didn't do any of that. That wasn't me. It's a fucking movie. Well, we just saw it in the fucking screening hall, you prick. Get him.
And it says here he did have some praise for Pacino and Saradin's characterizations. In a 2006 interview, the movie screenwriter said he tried to visit Sonny in prison many times to get more deal about his story when he was writing the screenplay, but Sonny refused to see him because he felt he wasn't paid enough money for the rights to his story. So it sounds like he got fucking hosed. Like, just
but at the same time, you can't be mad about them portraying your story inaccurately while refusing to do interviews with them for a financial deal that you made with them.
Yeah, I know. I'm always kind of like, I go back and forth on this. The one that always fucked me up was the Titanic guy. You know about the Titanic guy?
No,
you know
I
the
don't know
movie
what you're talking
Titanic,
about.
obviously. Titanic, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know that guy who's like he's a captain or he's high up ranking, he's got a hat, and he might not even be. No, he's just in a tux actually. He's just some rich motherfucker, I think. And you know, he wigs out and he takes the gun and he starts fucking get back! They're my lifeboats. They're my lifeboats. Yeah. Well, anyway, because they're all using people's real names in it. So in real life, he actually was pushing other men and disruptive people away, helping women and children get into the boats, refused to get into the boat himself, gave up his space when people were going, it's now or never, mate, you've got to get on, gave up his space to somebody else and went down with the ship and died like an honourable guy. And they did that to him in the movie.
God damn, that's so egregious.
For years, his family,
I love it.
For years, his family were trying to sue like the theatre thing, James Cameron. I don't even know what happened in the end, but basically I think about like, imagine if there was like esports, the movie, and then like they had Richard Lewis in there, and it was me writing all the contracts. And it was me robbing all the people, I was running like an acid mine, like in my spare time with all the esports stars down there.
There's just footage of you hugging MBS.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like, you know, they
take what the Rainbow Rioters said about all the fucking shit with Saudi, and they just make Richard say all those lines. Like,
exactly.
If we work with them, their values might become shared like ours. That's what I, Richard Lewis, award-winning esports journalist, would like you to believe about my life and career.
And that happened, and I had no legal recourse because I said, "Oh, Rich, we're putting you in our esports movie. Here's 50 grand. Fucking hell, I need 50 grand." Like, so, you know, I'm always
Sure.
a little bit sympathetic, but then again, definitely read contracts before you sign them, particularly if they're with Hollywood.
Well, also,
aka
this
the devil.
was this was a situation where they were actively trying to. It feels like they were actively trying to make an accurate film, and he denied them that
Sure.
opportunity.
I just can't. I'm still not over that shit when they were like, right, sign this deal. It's like, oh, okay, I'll do the deal. They're like, lol, we're not honoring it. Get wrecked. Like, in fact, maximum prison sentence. Like, what? What the fuck? Why
By
you
the
doing
way,
that?
as well, there's another weird aspect to this when I was like reading up on it. So apparently, there was also like a novelization
Fucking hell.
of Dog Day Afternoon.
Why
And
don't
so-
this way then say they make a whole franchise, like get you new,
Yeah.
like fucking life's like, you know, a fucking Sonny one, and then you know, oh, we'll have to kill the Sal one on the way out, and your little
So
doll.
again, I got this from Wikipedia, so obviously anyone can edit Wikipedia.
Come
It's
on.
not necessarily a great source. But I heard there was like a novel, because there was a number of lawsuits around the film. So Sonny's real life wife, whose name in real life is Carmen, she apparently got $50 for her contribution, and she, obviously, you know what she's depicted like in the film, and even Sonny objected to it. But then there was and she was like saying she felt that they'd made her repulsive, and then the novelization of Dog Day Afternoon comes out, and the line, this is unreal, you're gonna have to bleep this, but the line in the novel is, on Wikipedia, it says, the novelization of Dog Day Afternoon described her as a fat cunt. What is happening? Like, why are you
I love
doing
it.
this
I
to
love it.
people? And anyway, yeah, so that's literally the line. The novelization of Dog Day Afternoon referred to her as a fat cunt and a no good puss bag. You know, it's crazy that there was like, I know I always get a little bit worried because I think this is like a noble film at its heart, and it's talking about these great issues, and it makes like very interesting points, but it's also kind of interesting when you read like how the sausage gets made, and I'm always super worried about that when Hollywood adapts reality for its own ends, because let's not forget, right, if Sonny's a real person, and according to his biography, from what I could find, he really was a gay man. He'd been an activist, a gay activist at various points in his life, and he was really estranged from his wife, and she's a real woman, and there's kids involved, and it's like, and why create a narrative that he left her because she's fat and disgusting and it turned him gay? Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, that's pretty insane. That's very non-progressive, I would go so far as to say. So it's kind of interesting, but I mean, ultimately, I just want to include these things so people are kind of aware that there's always going to be a level of artifice for any adaptation of real life material in Hollywood. You know, the nature of stories, they sort of have to tie things up in a neat little bow and make it a bit more understandable, because real life is obviously way more complex and it doesn't necessarily have a narrative theme or cohesion. It's just a bunch of shit that happens to you before you die. But when you're doing a movie script, you need to sort of, make it so it's all thematically tied together.
But it's so the best example is, I often tell people, if you've ever seen the Danny Boyle Steve Jobs film, he actually obviously read the biography I did, but he just did use artistic license like that to make that whole thing where like the iMac looked like the shape that his daughter drew. That was nothing, by the way, guys. I read all the biography. That never happened. But the joke is that like fake artificial way to tie together the messy threads of someone's life in a film actually makes the narrative better, even though it definitely did not happen in real life, and there isn't an easy answer to what that guy's life was about or any of those things that it neatly wrapped up in a bow. So no, I agree with you. The problem is, like, at the end of the day, the purpose of a film is not to be incredibly representative of a real life story. You're supposed to be taking the elements of it and then doing something yourself with it artistically, if you're the scriptwriter or Sidney Lumet or Al Pacino for that matter. So in this case, I feel bad for the guy in the sense that I agree with you. If you are like a real historical figure and they do like that guy in the Titanic one's a good one, where like they treat you like you're an absolute cunt, even though basically you just did a great job and you're like a hero. That is fucked up if you're the family. But at the same time, if you need a villain in the story, that would just be a quick out, wouldn't it? Like, let's make this guy a villain. So that's just the nature of storytelling, guys, I'm afraid. Sometimes you need these easy fill-ins, as it were.
Yeah, here it is. I want to find out about that, guys. Like, yeah, here we go. Yeah, yeah, it literally, and he shoots himself as well, apparently. It's
Even
like,
better. That's better, isn't it?
yeah, like what the fuck are you doing with that? Like, I mean, just give him a different name.
Well, I'd love
Or
this. I
just
just like
invent
the
a fake
idea.
character. Nobody
I
cares
like
if
the
it's just a
idea.
fake
Give him a
character.
different name in this. You know,
What I
that's
appreciate is that
Sonny
he's the most like heroic character ever in this in the Titanic, and then it's like at the end he's like, take my spot on the lifeboats. Just promise me one thing: tell my story. And they're like, yeah, we will, sure,
We will.
see you. Like, I know exactly.
Well,
And he
unbelievable.
immortalized for all time as the biggest cunt of all time. By the way, what my final note to say on this movie goes like this: the actual thing, like I say, to go all the way to what I said at the beginning of the film is, it isn't a heist film. In fact, it isn't anything like any of the other films we've watched in any context to me. This is just an incredibly real humanistic drama that draws you in, and they just use the clever conceit of something else to make you not sort of realize you suddenly become embroiled like they did themselves thematically in this thing where you have to see it through just like they do. It's one of the most compelling films I think I've ever seen. Like, what I would say is, I would just say the final line for me would be, this is like, we're in there with them. We are part of their group doing this. And it is utterly haunting. Like, here's what I actually realized at the end is I couldn't remember much about this film. I remember it was a good film. I remember watching it. I remember it was a classic Pacino. The joke is, I hadn't forgotten it. I'd blocked it out. The call was coming from inside the building. What's in the box? I am Tyler Durden. Soylent Green is people. Basically, the point is, it's just a classic like cinema fucking orgasm. Basically, it's a good one. This is a mega film. You got to watch this one.
Yeah, my
One of the
final
best we've
thoughts,
done for sure.
Yeah, my final thoughts are this. I think this is just like it's masterful acting, masterful performances, masterful direction, and the way it draws you into the story because these topics are so weighty, and you know, for a Zoomer generation, the 70s might as well be fucking 300 BC. You know, like it feels so alien, and I get that. But the way the film draws you in, I mean, keep in mind, right from the title sequence, you're just in New York during a heat wave, you know, and it's just, you just go through the city and you see all these little vignettes of, you know, like homeless people gathering around outside the liquor store and people listening to music and, you know, kids playing in the streets. And it's just to let you know, this is just another day in a crazy fucking city, and we're going to be there for it. And we just go to the car where it goes from like the song at the start, and then it's, you know, it's diegetic sound coming out of the car, and then we're in. And it just does a wonderful job of drawing you into this like incredibly, you know, bizarre day in the lives of these deeply damaged people, right?
But at the same time, like, it's a bizarre day, but it's also the ordinariness of the characters, I think, is what is so compelling about this, because even though Sonny and Sal make some terrible decisions, like, it's a situation that is escalating and spiraling out of control faster than they know what to deal with. And even though certainly their actions are not acceptable, like, they're not doing it for bad reasons at the end of the day, right? Like, he is trying, you know, what's so sad about this is that Sonny is trying to do this not even for himself, but for somebody else, right? It's supposed to be in some way an act of generosity. And I think that when you watch,
you can't go too far with that though. Once you can't actually imply that like getting gender assignment surgery is like Aladdin stealing bread. Basically, not everyone is Aladdin. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Sometimes you just want, you know, a surgery for whatever reasons you want it. But like, I mean, the joke is that's why, if anything, actually the movie could be more relevant today, because if you want to claim that as a human right, then this movie would actually be arguing a very different position, wouldn't it? So could have even alluded to that, right?
No, but it's another reason why I'm very surprised this movie hasn't been.
You think it would have had a resurgence, wouldn't you? It's got so much in it.
Yeah, I'm very surprised that this hasn't sort of been like, you know, held up. Maybe it's because of some of the unsavory language, I guess, maybe around that topic.
Richard,
I don't know.
I think that many people who are terminally online may not have the attention spans to watch this film, would be my guess. Like, this is
maybe
this is something that, you know, is a very slow burn. And like, I approach this very much from a theatrical perspective. And if you're not used to the pace of live theater, this can seem boring, I would imagine.
Maybe. I think what it's very good at, and like any good drama does this, it's this constant, you you stack the crises in a row, and each one slightly raises the stakes.
Sure.
And you go through in this progressive where, look, it starts out with, are they going to be able to get to the getaway car? Are they going to be able to get all the women into the vault? And then by the end of the movie, are they going to get off the fucking tarmac alive? Like it's and I think, put it this way, when I was like, after I watched the movie and I sort of like saw the little line on fucking Amazon Prime, where it's like shows you how long the movie is, I'm like, shit,
Well, it doesn't feel like it's that long, does it?
was that 2 hours? Yeah, I was like, no fucking way.
Yes.
Felt like an episode of TV.
Yeah.
And so I mean, look, again, my final thoughts are this is like a must-watch movie for me. It's one of those films that unfortunately it's always going to be just a bit too niche because it's the premise of action with the reality of drama. It's the premise of crime, but really it's about social issues. It's a time capsule movie. It's a true story, so bizarre it doesn't even feel true as you watch it. So it's got all these like little niche things which make it a super interesting film. But if you were to get an apples for apples comparison and recommend another bank robbery type movie, people would probably plump for that one because it's going to be an easier watch and will probably do what it says on the tin more than Dog Day Afternoon does. I mean, even the title is a trick.
Yeah, I mean, it's a prosaic title that just means like a hot afternoon in the summer, right?
A hot afternoon where you want to just lie around and laze around, and it's like that's not what's going on in this film. I looked into the phrase actually, and I did find something from ancient Rome. Apparently, when the dog days, what is it? Canis,
Canis it's the rising of Sirius.
Star.
It's the rising of Sirius, the star,
right.
Which happens in the summer.
And apparently it's like they used to sacrifice a brown dog to appease the rage, and it got me thinking that Sal is the brown dog, right? I don't think.
What the hell? Now I hate the Roman Empire. Curse you, Roman Empire.
Sacrifice.
Exactly. That's a lot too far for me.
Where will you draw the line? But yeah, obviously that makes me think that it might even be a cleverer title than you think.
You know how many? Yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say,
sadly, I've just realised I now know, Richard, finally how we're going to get them all on board. One of the things that's been a frustration for you is that even if people will like lightly acknowledge the Saudi thing in esports, they'll never acknowledge the China thing of like what China does in their things. Well, the joke is obviously what I should do logically is I should just use a Frankie angle. I should say, guys, we should stop working with people that would kill our dogs. There's a fucking good angle. Because they do that dog festival, don't they, with roasting them alive. Like, all I'm going to say is there's the angle right there. There's the angle.
It's perfect. But yeah, I mean, so, look, I think you've got to watch this movie. There's probably a section of the audience that we have that might actually prefer this to Heat. And if you are, I'd very much like to see what you thought about it in the comments below, because I can totally understand that perspective. Oh, and just quickly to the guy who said in the comments on Heat that Heat isn't a real heist movie because there's barely any planning in it. I don't know, dude. Like, do you really need the blueprints on the fucking table for it to be a heist movie? Again, tell us what you think in the comments below. Please do.
It's also weird because it does contain, it just doesn't, like you say, have a scene where someone literally opens a blueprint and says, like, it has a thing where he's passing in blueprints, like guys tell him about the bank computer and how it works, and how you can have how many minutes to get out before the line. Like, it does all of it. Like, what this guy actually, what does he think a heist movie is? Notice they never just say like this movie. Like, what movies he recommended? Like,
he might be in love. He might be in love with the Thomas Crown Affair. Who knows?
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah.
I'll wait and see. Remember, there is one already in the stable, isn't there?
Well, that would be his problem with this film. How could this be a true great heist movie like MonteCristo would think? There's not even a sex scene in it. So,
Me. Oh God,
How many sex scenes were in that movie as well?
I know.
So I'm going into that again. I'm getting drawn back into
I
that.
know,
film.
I know. I can just see his glistening, wooden ass.
It's over.
You're a marvelous
I know.
woman.
I know.
I'm spent. I'm so dehydrated. Oh my God.
There's one thing, by the way, it's a quick aside about Hollywood as well. They have always been, look, I know the stereotypes, but they've always been so egregious about out of nowhere, with no warning, just flashing a male ass right in your face on the fucking camera. Like, you like this actor? There you go. There's his ass in the shower. Like, no reason. It's not even like done in a sexy way. It's just like, there's his ass. Like,
it's a terrible film. It's a terrible film. But have you ever seen the National Lampoon's Lethal Weapon parody, Loaded Weapon?
Yes.
No,
And
I
it's where
haven't.
Emilio Estevez, who plays the Mel Gibson character, Riggs, the equivalent in the movie, he gets up and he walks away from the woman in bed. She goes, "Where you going?" And he goes, "Nothing. Just taking one of those butt in the moonlight walks." And he's got this ridiculous prosthetic ass. That's just so perfect. I love it. Like, off you go. It was like Thomas Crown Affair was 100% that.
All right. Well, next up will be Sneakers. Change in tone. We actually picked 4 very different films, which is fun because the heist genre has quite a bit of breadth to it. So we will be back next week with Sneakers, and then after that, we'll announce our new arc.